film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favorite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film would become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello, welcome back, guys, to part 2. This is the part of the show where we have a look at your Instagram responses from the previous episode, and that previous episode was about anime films with the World of Horror podcast, and the Matt and Mark movie show went with Perfect Blue, and Anton Kinelove went with Kiki's Delivery Service, which Christina and Mac chose. Guys, I'm intrigued. What is your anime film of choice for you?
Well, when we did an animation month and we decided to do an anime movie, My pick was Howl's Moving Castle, another Miyazaki film. I love that movie. I'm not sure if that's yours. I think you're more of a Princess Mononoke guy.
Do love that one.
Princess Mononoke, I'm very into. I'm also a big Ninja Scroll guy.
Ninja Scroll is also great. Yes, I agree. That's not cool. Miyazaki.
Not Miyazaki at all, but Ninja Scroll's anime. But no, Princess Mononoke is big for me. I do really like Spirited Away as well. I mean, it's so hard with him because every single time I watch, I'm like, oh, this is my favorite. I'm like, no, My Neighbor Totoro is my favorite.
Oh, we like Ghost in the Shell.
Yes.
Akira is good too, actually. So
yeah, I picked that one. I was just like, wow, the ideas that this film is going for is just kind of insane with the scale. I was like, wow, love it so much. So as we are talking Matthew Vaughn films, it is our guest's pick next. Georgia and John, what did you go for Mr. Vaughn?
We chose Kingsman: The Secret Service.
Nice. So why did you go with this one? Were there any other picks in contention that nearly made the cut?
Well, we talked about Layer Cake, and I think and Kick-Ass was our other choice as well. So it was kind of a three-way tie between those three. We started to watch things again and kind of evaluate. And with Layer Cake, we kind of came down to the feeling that it really was more of a Guy Ritchie film that Matthew Vaughn took over than a Matthew Vaughn, specific type film. I think that we may have also talked about X-Men, but you had already done that. So we kind of didn't even put that into the contention for that reason. But we do quite like First Class. That's a great movie.
Yeah, we did cover it on the podcast. I feel like I was a bit harsh on it.
I haven't seen it for a long time either, so
quite far down the list, but yeah, I'm not sure it holds up amazingly. I feel like you can feel the constraints that Matthew Vaughn was under, that he wanted to go a little bit further, a bit more dramatic with how he wanted to make this film. Definitely not his strongest for me.
Yeah. And we hadn't actually seen Stardust, so I thought about watching that one and checking it out, but when I really dug into it and started thinking about Matthew Vaughn and what I like the most, it really had to be Kingsman: The Secret Service. We're pretty big Bond fans. We watch those movies over and over.
Oh, yeah.
And this movie just really does a great job of kind of taking that kind of classic spy film and expanding on it, modernizing it, subverting it, while at the same time perfectly supporting it. The cast in this movie is phenomenal. We thought that it was really well written. And it just takes all the things that Matthew Vaughn is really good at and does them perfectly. And interestingly enough, when we were kind of watching some of the supporting material on the disc that we have, Matthew Vaughn actually said this movie is kind of like his thesis film, where he did take kind of all the things that he has learned. And really turned it up.
It definitely feels like that. Yeah. Even if you don't know that.
I think for that reason, that's why we had to go with it, because it's really just like a quintessential Matthew Vaughn movie. And it was really funny. We really were happy that you picked Kick-Ass because we like it as well. And really thought that the two films are very similar in a lot of ways. You have your young guy protagonist who's in a world that's totally different from the one he's grown up in. You have very action-oriented comic book basis. You know, you have just so many things similar between the two. It's still different at the same time because a comic book movie and a spy movie are different, but it's still like subgenres of action. So yeah, that's most of the reasons, the many reasons we picked this movie.
So what happens in Kingsman, The Secret Service?
So in Kingsman, The Secret Service, your main character is this kid, Eggsy Unwin. He's kind of a like lower status kind of English kid, lives in like row housing or whatever.
South London,
yeah. And it turns out that his father had been kind of a recruit to the secret spy organization and died when he was a kid. And his life has kind of gone in a different direction since then. And this guy, Harry Hart, played by Colin Firth, who feels kind of like he was responsible for what happened to Eggsy's dad, comes back in and tries to give Eggsy a chance. And this movie is about him taking that chance to become a super spy. And he does a great job.
Yeah, so initial reactions for me, like, I love this film. I think it's his best film for me. I've actually got the comic books for both Kick-Ass and, well, the comic is actually called The Secret Service. There is no Kingsman in the title for the comic, so that's all Matthew Vaughn. So I feel like with this one, this is like half Mark Millar's work and Matthew Vaughn. So it's a kind of a great hybrid there, whereas with Kick-Ass, it's very much a pure adaptation with trying to work out the end because Mark Millar hadn't finished that comic either. So yeah, it's a really interesting one, the way he subverts like the James Bond type films, and there's even literally direct commentary about how they prefer the old Bond movies and not how they've got all serious now with Daniel Craig. So I really kind of love that. The comic book, The Secret Service, is very kind of basic. It's a really short issue, only 6 issues. So you can really feel Matthew Vaughn's influence, that he's padded a lot of this out to make a really great story here. John, your initial reactions to this one?
Well, yeah, Kingsman, The Secret Service, when we saw the trailer years ago, it was one where I wasn't really amped for it. I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure what we're up to here. I see a magical umbrella. I see, Colin Firth, who is awesome. Taron Egerton, can't believe this was his first movie. It's like, who's this guy? I was just like not really sure about any of it. Georgia was the driving force in us going to the movies to see it. And when we went, I had no expectations. I knew nothing about the comic book. And so I went on this ride fresh, and it was incredible. I couldn't believe the caliber of talent and the level of imagination. And as Georgia mentioned, we're really familiar with the Bond films. We know the tropes. We know the we know the tropes. We know the gags. We know the little in-jokes that they have throughout the film. So we're able to really appreciate that. And they were able to give us these action sequences that were just fantastic. Again, they give us, 3 different guys that all could have been James Bond. Michael Caine, they talked about him being James Bond.
Yeah.
Colin Firth, he could have been James Bond. Taron Egerton, he could be James Bond. So it's like, we have, this really strong crew that's going in. The idea of setting it, at a tailor, fantastic. When Matthew Vaughn talked about the fact that this is a very famous tailor shop that he actually gets his suits done at, and all of these massive, celebrities, dignitaries go here, and that he was there for a fitting, and he was just spacing out, and he thought, what if I just put my hand on the mirror, and this whole thing just went down into this secret area? That was really, where the idea was born. And of course, Mark Millar And also, something that we haven't mentioned yet is Jane Goldman, who was also a writer on Kick-Ass as well as Kingsman. And, she, has worked with Matthew Vaughn on some projects. And I find it interesting that these are the two films that we talked about, because I feel that her input must really be bringing something to the table. When we saw behind the scenes footage, she's actually on the set, and she's someone that they consult with.
Yeah.
So I feel that it's like a shared vision that we see.
Yeah.
And it's like this triumvirate,
Yeah, well, she says Matthew Vaughn thinks in images and she thinks in words. So it's kind of like the two of them together kind of bring what you need to make a screenplay, contributing half each.
Well, Matthew Vaughn says he can't write well at all. He's like, I'm terrible. I throw it down on the paper. He gives it to Jane Goldman, and she makes it something, that makes sense that you're interested in.
Cuts out all the crap.
Yeah. Make this interesting, please.
Yeah. Matthew, that is way too much blood. We need to get rid of that.
It's just, we always think of class, right? When we think of James Bond. And, when we think of, Casino Royale, that was the first time that you really got the idea that James Bond, came from some kind of rougher existence. I mean, we find out,
which
of course.
He didn't.
No, he didn't. In Skyfall, we find out, oh my God, he lived out here? Okay, I thought, okay, whatever, I guess not.
But in this case, he does,
Yeah.
You have this kid who is playing posh pretty well, but he isn't, this is like, low class, living in the projects kid who's kind of being dragged into this and is in some ways playing a role.
Yeah. It's something where you could really see, the discussion in your mind that Matthew Vaughn had with Mark Miller about, yes, we want it to be fun like it used to be when we would go and see these films. And, we can see, Q, we can see M. All of these people are in there. It's the biggest change that we have in Kingsman is that we have Roxy, who is an agent, who is competent. She is more competent than anyone else. And she always gets the job done, which is really fantastic. It's a really nice breath of fresh air, because being a fan of the Bond films, when you go back, oh, Christ, are they horrible, in terms of how they treat women. It's really, really shitty. Yeah. Judi Dench in Skyfall, I mean, that's her swan song. I love the movie. What happens in that movie? We're like, hey, Judi Dench, you're incompetent. It's just like, fuck. Did that have to be the way out?
Well, I mean, and I think that also James Bond is kind of snooty, right? Because we do have, rich people being rich. And part of what makes Eggsy good at this is that he does have more life experience than just being like a private school kid or something. Because the other people that he's up against, Roxy is like a woman in a man's world, which is why I think she has a different perspective and she lasts to the end. But some of these other guys are just like random rich guy
from Oxford or Cambridge.
Yeah,
they'll do.
and because of that, they kind of are a dime a dozen in this world. And and then you have Michael Caine, who is very resistant to the idea that a kid who is lower class could be in the Kingsman.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most fascinating elements of the script in this film. So directing then, like, I love the first 10 minutes of this film. Like, as soon as you see like two guys hanging from a helicopter shooting two guys in the Middle East, you know this film is going to be wild. Like, I love how Matthew Vaughn underplays that scene as well, where you have all these like explosions in this castle and the agents taking out all these people, but you just hear it, you don't see anything, and you have this like long push-in shot through the window. Then it establishes that Jack Davenport is going to be like the new guy to follow in this story. Then the next action scene is with him, and it's super slick, saving Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill's character. And I feel like Matthew Vaughn was really focused on composing the shots to look as stylish as possible. But what I love is that it's all for a joke in that scene. Like, before you know it, he's sliced in two by Sophia Belletta's character, Gazelle. Like, it just makes her super deadly compared to what we've just seen. But what I didn't like so much is Samuel L. Jackson's entrance, because you see Gazelle, like, cover all these bodies with blankets, and you're like, what's she doing? I don't understand. Then it's because Jackson's character, Valentine, can't stand the sight of blood. But I was like, we haven't seen any blood. Might be because I watched this on Disney Plus, I'm not sure, but so that was kind of frustrating. But, you know, Jack Davenport gets sliced in two, but there's no blood whatsoever. So I was just like, that didn't quite work for me. But I don't know whether they just cut that out for Disney Plus.
I don't think there was much. If there was I mean, it was, it's kind of jokey with that anyway. I mean, it's also difficult because Gazelle, like, is so cool, and then Valentine, she's working for him, and I just think she's cooler than him, like, regularly in this movie.
Well, you know, one thing I want to mention about the castle is that, you know, it actually makes you think of when Sean Connery came back as James Bond, Never Say Never Again, and then we have this shot where we zoom into him. I think he's in a castle or some kind of ruin,
right?
And you know, he's in there and he's doing, you know, his James Bond business, and he, you know, frees a woman and he lets down his guard and he gets killed, you know, fake killed because it's a training exercise. But it's just, I think that there's definitely, you know, an echo of that in here, because every scene feels like we have something that we've brought in from another film. The James Bond films really known for very quirky, specific villains. They always have a tick. They always have a deal. And the Samuel L. Jackson no blood thing is interesting. And he also is not a tough guy, which makes me think about him in Unbreakable, that he was the super villain with a plan, but he was Mr. Glass, right? You could, he would shatter because he didn't have the physical strength, but he has the power in his mind, the mental power to bring it off. I mean, in many ways, I almost feel like Gazelle is driving the bus with the story.
Oh, yeah.
Because she is so much in charge of what's happening, because Valentine doesn't have, you know, the fortitude to deal with this. He can't do the dirty work. I mean, you know, when he shoots Galahad, he, like, you know, throws up. He can't do it. So it's an interesting turn.
Is he dead?
Yeah,
that's what happens when you shoot someone in the head.
I feel terrible. You know, it's just like...
he doesn't have the stomach. He has the brain, but not the stomach.
Yeah.
Again, I think that whole character is just subverting the Bond villain. The fact that he takes no pleasure in killing one of our heroes in a Bond film, he's taken all the pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So it's great in that sense. The second fight scene in the pub where you see, like, Colin Firth, very different film, in action for the first time is so good as well. Again, like, super slick. Like the one with Jack Davenport, you feel like the movement of the camera is composed perfectly, and the movement of the camera sort of reacts to what's happening with the punches. Also, it feels like Matthew Vaughn has removed a few frames here to make it feel faster than it actually is without adjusting the speed. There's only, like, one conventional wide shot, which in some ways looks a tad out of place, but Vaughn's style of action looks so unique to him now. It's amazing. Yeah, I really like that scene in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the idea of picking Colin Firth to play this character is so smart, because I don't know, I personally don't immediately think of Colin Firth being like this super action guy, you know. He is very, like, upper crust type, you know, and you get that out of him, but to see him, like, you know, go from, you know, being so proper and, you know, even like that defines who he is so much, you know, to the point where he's locking these people in and saying manners maketh man, and then he just, like, opens a can of whoop ass on them. It's pretty awesome. I mean, I just think, you know, just even having that idea is good, and it does have this very Matthew Vaughn style to the fight, the way that it's shot, even with the car chase, where Eggsy has stolen the car and is like driving backwards. It's fast. It's very exciting. But again, I think that the pacing is done perfectly because it doesn't become like this frantic edit fest. It's just like, we see exactly what we need to see, and it's perfectly paced. Like, he's wonderful. And it's almost like an orchestral thing for how he's like conducting, this movement. And it, instead of it being like some classical music, it's like a car chase or a fight.
It definitely feels like his most accomplished film in terms of action. Like, I think in Kick-Ass, you can see some of the rough edges with the direction, but here, everything feels so precise. It's quite incredible.
I think it's because of the fandom. I think it's because you have the idea of the Bond film firmly set in your mind. You have so many films that you can look at. And, if you're a fan, it's something you look at over and over again. And there are so many staples, I feel, of James Bond in Matthew Vaughn as a person. James Bond is always someone that's impeccably dressed, right? It's a smart guy that's always moving forward. It seems like that's something that's just kind of in the DNA with him and Guy Ritchie. It's just like, this is, it's like they're getting the smoking jacket. This is them.
Well, it's a control thing. Like, it's a controlling the situation thing, I think. Because James Bond is always in control, of any situation. When we see him lose control, it's weird,
Sure.
And it's usually for a reason, to communicate something.
I don't think it's like a complete riff on like James Bond though, because it still keeps its unique quality in this film. Like in the costuming, like it's more like pinstriped suits. You'd never really see Bonds like wear that kind of those suits with what Colin Firth carries off in this film. And they mention a lot of like how like the Kingsman came about through the First World War. A lot of these kids died during the First World War, and like all this money was going inherited to no one. So you kind of get that little bit of 1910s style, a little bit, I guess, with the decor and the costuming a little bit. So I think it definitely has its own unique style and not just completely like redoing James Bond, if you know what I mean.
Have you ever wondered why so many sitcom characters deliver babies inside elevators?
Or how on TV a second blow to the head can reverse amnesia?
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we break down 4 sitcom episodes that share a common trope or cliche. So if you want to critically examine how Carlton lost his virginity,
or discover how sitcom kids mysteriously age several years between seasons,
or dissect the sibling bond between Blossom and her brother, Jonathan Taylor Thomas,
look up the Sitcom Study on any podcast app. Wasn't Joey Lawrence Blossom's brother?
That was a test, and you passed.
Well, I mean, this movie kind of exists in a universe where James Bond also exists, right? I mean, like, they're pretty self-aware of what's going on. So, yeah, it takes from it, but it also has its own unique qualities as well. And I think that, there is a lot of exploration that what doesn't necessarily happen in the James Bond series with like class, for example, and women being able to be involved in an organization that actually has man in the title.
Yeah. It's, well, I think where I would say for me it most feels like James Bond is in the precision. I definitely, in terms of fashion, I'm not the guy, but I can tell you when somebody's impeccably dressed, and it's just like these guys are, impeccably dressed. And what do they do when they want to celebrate or they have a problem? They have a drink of the most expensive booze that there is.
Absolutely.
And, they're in an organization that does have the resources to literally go anywhere and do anything. just as in the case with James Bond. And, we have Michael Caine, who in many ways, is like an M from days of old. It's like he's in the office. He's going to tell you how it is. It's a stern thing. Here's the dossier.
But the funny thing is they subvert that by him being kind of classist and a total jackass in some ways.
And then a villain.
Who just pretty much goes with Valentine because Valentine's got money, right? It's like,
It's, again, the twists are what makes it spectacular. But I feel that it's everything here I feel is born out of a love letter to James Bond. And that's not to say that it doesn't have its own individual identity. But I feel like, what we would go back to the well of Bond and say, how could we change this? How could we bring this to the future?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even the sets, like when they're in that kind of underground bunker, looks like Bond.
That's totally Sean Connery Bond for sure. Hollowed out mountain. I mean, was it You Only Live Twice? It's a hollowed out volcano.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it actually made me think of Austin Powers, which of course,
that's funny.
It's another James Bond ripoff. But the first Austin Powers movie, they were in like the hollowed out volcano, and it looked like they were in the same set actually. So another Bond parody.
I think one action scene that isn't my favorite is like the skydiving action scene. And I feel like it's always difficult to make them feel really good. And I think this one, on the whole, does a pretty decent job. But I would say it's arguably the weakest one for me. But I feel like the music is working overtime to create the suspense. And you're even got like Mark Strong dropping his coffee to show that he's really nervous. And I think also it's just a case that skydiving scenes are just so difficult to shoot if you're willing to do it for real, and I think they are for the most part, so with real stunts. So that is very commendable as well, but not my favorite.
I agree. I think the one time the skydiving scene worked was Point Break.
Yes.
Because Patrick Swayze literally like rolled out of the plane on camera, and it felt really visceral and real because of that. But I also don't know that they even needed that in this. Like, I think they were probably just trying to mix it up because they already had fight scenes, car chase. What else can we do to make it exciting, because we're not going to go Tom Cruise and like hang off the side of a plane.
For over 100 times.
Yeah.
Don't have that kind of budget.
Or take a motorcycle off the side of a cliff or something.
No. Taron, here you go. What?
You've barely been in anything else. Why don't you do this? Yeah.
Tom Cruise did it. You can do it.
I feel that the biggest challenge was really the first challenge with like flooding the barracks, and someone actually died in that. I felt like that was the biggest challenge that we had. Then it was like, okay, we have skydiving, we have the dog situations. Cool. We get the dog. Then we have the seduction, and then it's like, then we have the railroad challenge, which is incredible. I thought that was really, really well done. And what that actually made me think about was Tenet, which... Because it's just like, oh, okay. And then we, go straight into this dog murdering sequence, which I felt like... it's just like when you see a dog, we look. If the animal dies... We're kind of like, I'm not sure about this.
I know, I'm not okay with dead dogs ever. Like, it's just an act. It's like a no.
Absolutely no.
So even the threat of killing a dog made me kind of like, it took me out of it a little bit because, we love Colin Firth, and he's just, why didn't you just shoot the dog? You know? And of course we found out,
it was a blank.
It's a blank, but I don't care. Like, you don't want to scare the dog, and
you should never imply to try and shoot a dog. I'm like, I don't. I feel like that never plays well, even if it is a blank, I'm like,
and it made me like lose respect for him and Roxy also. So I actually was on Eggsy's side of not even pretending to kill the dog.
Yeah, he like pointed the gun at Michael Caine. I felt better about that,
We all
Yeah.
did, especially as it goes on.
I mean, I was expecting Roxy to come out and just say, "I'm a cat person." It was fine, or something.
That would be great.
Yeah, then we would have had a good joke with it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last scene goes on for like a long while, but I feel like it steps it up a notch as it goes along. Like Taron Egerton gets some cool stuff to do, and there's some fun POV shots in there. Ultimately, I think I prefer Colin Firth's action because he makes it feel so effortless at times, or pretty much the whole time, frankly. You know, Taron's action at the end is more athletic, and that's what you would expect from him. It's just a shame it suffers a bit from the stormtrooper problem. You know, the goons can't shoot for shit. But my favorite part is definitely the exploding head scene, where it's, you know, all lovely and pretty colors, like fireworks going off. At times, it's kind of like directed like it's a 1930s musical, which I found was great, really fun. And the final fight with Gazelle was really fun as well, and kind of treads that line of being too much, but I think it sticks the landing pretty well in the end. Yeah, quite a long scene, you know, in that hollowed out mountain, but I think there's enough variety in the action to get you through.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think like we've kind of been stepping around the church fight and not talking about it, probably because that's our favorite scene. I know that's our favorite scene.
By
Same.
It's
By
just,
far, yeah.
you know, to me, that's like the set piece of this movie. It's the part that if anybody wanted to know why I liked it, I would show them that scene because it's just perfectly done. It's so grotesque what's going on, you know. It's all these people fighting who don't have the ability to fight, you know, and then you have Harry who does, and you know, but it's just wild. You just put that many people in a room and they just go wild on each other. And again, you know, there's a lot happening action wise in that scene, but Vaughn directs it in a way that you are always focused on what he wants you to be focused on. And it's just perfectly choreographed. It's like watching a dance, you know, a ballet, a very gruesome ballet.
Yeah, you know exactly what's going on. You know exactly how each of these people are getting killed. And it comes back to like George Miller for me, with when you've got like really intense action from Fury Road and The Road Warrior, those films. Like the most important part of those action sequences in the shots are always in the middle, and I don't think it's any different here. So I think it's really clever. And again, for me, the church scene is definitely my favorite scene as well. It's quite incredible. And I feel like it's a combination of everything that Matthew Vaughn has learned as a filmmaker, all put into this one scene. And I love how it just goes on and on and on and increasingly gets more violent as it goes on. It's quite similar in style to the pub scene, of course, but this time it's all in one shot. I quite like the fact that it is kind of chopped up a bit with cutaways to Eggsy and Merlin and Valentine, because I think if you would keep it all in one, it would feel very exhausting than it already does feel. You know, it definitely treads that line, but to the point where it could feel out of place to be in a film like this, if you know what I mean. What's really impressive too is that there's so much attention to the background performances as well as what Colin Firth is doing with his action. I think my favorite parts are where Galahad sets alight a guy's head with a lighter. And I swear there's a reference to The Omen here when Galahad kills the last guy with a pike to the head, similar to how someone dies in The Omen. Then, of course, Galahad dies from a bullet to the head, which is the big shock moment a few moments later. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, and I mean, that's so gutting, you know, because he survived like this insane fight. And then he just walks out and that happens. But it's super effective, like, and it also turns Eggsy into who he needs to be. this drifts into screenplay a little bit, but I just think that it's really well plotted, and well written with character in mind, of character development, to see that develop that way.
I also like the fact that they use Freebird during that fight in the church. And every time we cut away, we get the Freebird back. I'm like, oh, I hope we get the Freebird back. So it's like we have, this ballet to like this raucous, song that people always want to cheer for. And, when we think about, the people in the church and the amount of hate, that is inside the people attending this church, it does soften the blow in terms of the carnage. Because I feel like this is like you're seeing like a fantasy of someone who wants to, have, let's say, a better world, have equality, have happiness. And you're with people that want the exact opposite of that. It almost was like a Walter Mitty dreamlike sequence. And, I think we really find the humor in that, and putting, this slaughter to the tune of Freebird, which is just this happy song that's all about like just being free and being who you are.
Well, but it's also Southern, and then you've got like these kind of Southern people in there who are like that. I mean, it feels dangerous already.
Yeah.
In that room. Dangerous. And it becomes dangerous, but not for the reason you think. It's because they get their switch flipped by this microchip or whatever. But it already feels dangerous in there, but it's like Harry can handle it. Like, like that's my favorite line. It's what he says to the woman in there, where it just says that he's every single thing that they hate, So I just am going to leave now.
Well, you feel like that could have tipped the scales anyways, in terms of, something popping off. I mean, with a preacher, he seems psychotic, very fiery, excellent performance. These people are very frightening in the way that you would see a cult. It makes me think about the movie Silent Hill, or like, I don't know, you walked into a place that you just shouldn't be in, like The Room in Rosemary's Baby. We could go down the line here. So I think it's fantastic how when the fuse is lit, the way that it explodes. And I mean, I understand why we have to kill the father figure of Galahad. It's so we get growth with the main character. Again, it's something that we saw in Kick-Ass, which we just talked about. But still, it's when you have these father figures that are such good characters and have played such an important role in the film, and if you enjoyed their story, it makes it so much harder to go on.
It's a tremendous loss to the film. And they try to bring him back, in the next movie, and it was unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really understand that decision. So, John, were you slightly disappointed then that they killed off Galahad? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't want him to go. Again, I mean, I can see something as, a lover of film. I can see something as just an audience member. And, as an audience member, I hated it. And I was very sad about it. But again, that's a great movie because it hit me the right way. And you can see in the script, hey, okay, this makes sense. He has to go so that Eggsy can be the hero. Because up to that point, we saw Colin Firth really as our action hero and not Eggsy. We didn't see him have to go to the next level. So it completely makes sense. And also, if Galahad had to go out, I mean, he went out with a bang. This is like Wild Bunch style. That you can't, like, where was he going to go after that? There is nothing more he could do after that. Like that, he took it all the way. So it's excellent filmmaking. But I'm speaking from, the audience member that's like, oh, no.
I totally agree. I mean, you nailed it. That's it. Like, from a film appreciation standpoint, seeing how that contributes to the character growth of your real protagonist, I get it. But when Harry is gone, it's just a super bummer, because Harry is so cool and Colin Firth is so great as Harry that it just super sucks personally. That you're like, oh man, he's gone.
So is that everyone's favorite scene?
Oh, by far.
It has to be for me. Yeah,
by far, yeah.
It's genius. It's genius. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's like John Wick level action, and it's also wonderful because Colin Firth, fantastic actor,
great casting,
Pride and Prejudice, Bridget Jones, everything. This guy is fantastic. King's Speech. You always love this guy, but I have you know, you think about the fight in Bridget Jones, then you think about what he does in that church. I mean, these are two very different things, right?
Yeah, it just shows you the skill level of Matthew Vaughn, that he can make Colin Firth look amazing, that you're totally convinced that he can kill every single person in this church.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And I mean, like, yeah, from the other roles Colin Firth has played, I wouldn't be comfortable asking him to mail a letter for me. But in this, it's like he can just shit can 100 people, no problem.
Well, he has a vision, and that's what's so wonderful about him as a director. Again, it's this confident vision.
Absolutely.
They knew exactly what they wanted. And, you know, in the comic book, I understand it wasn't a church scene. It was actually a wedding.
Nope.
And it was a massacre at a wedding. And they were like, okay, we can't do a wedding massacre. Let's change it, you know, to a place where people are very hateful, you know, like a hateful church. And that was their, you know, way that they went and made that same beat happen, but in a different location.
Yeah. And he doesn't like die straight after the church scene or the wedding scene in the comic. It's it's a few pages later, and kind of a really boring way as well. So I feel like, I think Mark Miller would probably admit this as well, that I think the film is better than the comic book. I think probably simply because it is quite slight. So directing score for me, I think I'm going to go a solid 9 here. I just think, you know, Matthew Vaughn has shaved off the rough edges from his previous work, and this is as slick as it gets in terms of spy action for me. So 9. Comfort Films?
We gave it a 9.1, so we're right there with you.
Okay.
I just think this is brilliant.
Yeah, you really see somebody, again, that achieves their vision, and you can feel that as an audience member, whether you've watched a million films or whether you've watched one. If you walk out and you go, this uncovered every stone, and I feel completely fulfilled. I wasn't looking at my watch. I would watch this again anytime, and I'm sure there's even more that I'm going to see the next time I watch it.
Screenplay, then. There's 2 stories going on here. Like the main plot and Eggsy's training scenes in the Kingsman facility. Like, strangely, I found the training scenes with Eggsy more interesting and fun, because I think with Galahad investigating Valentine, it's all about like an environmental plot by culling the world's population with these mobile chips. In that narrative, it's kind of riffing off the old Bond films too, which is great and fun. But with the training, they all feel quite inventive, especially the first one with the tank, you know, with the water surprise. You know, the fact that they have to train a puppy throughout, like the skydiving. So it's not your average like gun range assault course stuff. They put a lot of thought into what they could do differently in these types of sequences.
Yeah, and I think it's very character building as well, because we really do start to understand what makes Eggsy right for this job, when, you know, he just seems like kind of a reprobate kid who just kind of runs around and getting in trouble all the time. But some of those aspects of his personality and background actually works for him in this case. So where everybody else just runs in to like put a tube into the toilet to be able to breathe, that's not actually getting them out of the situation. No. So
yeah, you can't get out.
They're surviving, but they're just still there, you know. But he goes, you know, he's trying to open the door, and then when that doesn't work, he goes and punches through the glass to get them out. So even though everybody else had a higher chance of surviving by breathing underwater, they're not changing the situation. He's the one who's doing that.
And even with the fact that Eggsy punches through the glass, because of the fact that it's a setup, it's a training task for them to do, like, so you can give it a pass a little bit, the fact that he does punch through glass. So maybe they have weakened it on purpose, I don't know, because it's a task. But yeah, I love how like unpredictable this film is. There are so many occasions in the writing where you think you know how the scene is going to play out, but something completely different happens, like when Eggsy steals that gang's yellow car, then drives off. Then it comes back into shot, going in reverse, being chased by a police car. And then when you see all the candidates for the first time in the bunks, you know, that then the place starts to flood. Like, who saw that coming? No one.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite misdirect is one that you mentioned briefly, John, is during the final task when you think they're supposed to try and seduce this girl at a club, like in a Sean Connery Bond film. Then you realize they've been drugged and it's a test to see if they would give up Kingsman. Of course, Eggsy passes, but I loved it because we've just had a few references to older Bond films in the conversation between Valentine and Galahad, that they don't prefer the serious Bond films with Daniel Craig, they prefer the older ones. So when the final task begins with this seduction scene, you're not thinking too much that this feels a tad old-fashioned. So I loved how the film kind of plays on your love, well, my love of Bond films anyway, the older ones, to misdirect you. So I found that was quite clever in kind of knowing who your audience is in going in to watch this film, that, you know, you're going to, Matthew Vaughn and Jane Goldman are very much playing on your love of older Bond films to mess with your expectations. So I thought that was really clever for me.
Well, what's smart about it too is that you don't have to be familiar, I think, with Bond to enjoy the movie still too. So like if you are a Bond fan and you have a lot of knowledge there, it kind of adds an extra layer to the enjoyment of the film. But even if you're just some, you know, regular person who doesn't have much experience in that, you can still really watch this and enjoy it because it does follow some of the expectations, even though it is also subverting them at the same time.
I think one thing that we should point out is with all these training exercises, we never actually see any combat training. That's not anything that we see. And usually when we have the Bond films, we always go through the layer where people are, you know, using flamethrowers, they're using crazy gadgets to take each other down. There's a fight, there's a battle. None of that is here. So it's almost like it's assumed that these people coming in have weapons knowledge, have, you know, hand-to-hand combat knowledge. And what they're trying to test is just really their survival skills and their mettle to see if they can trust them.
Teamwork.
And it's also in terms of the glass in the room. You see, I think, again, we're, you know, going back to the Bond films because, okay, Skyfall. I love Skyfall. He gets shot off of a moving train that is about, I don't know, 200 feet in the air, falls down into the ocean. We don't even see a first aid kit, okay? And this guy just makes it, and he's fine. So it's like we always have, you know, these leaps of faith in the Bond films that we accept. And I think that's their nod to that, because we always have something that's just like, okay, how did that actually occur? How did that happen? So, it's different that we see a film where we actually see, you know, these candidates actually vying for a position in the organization. That's much different than the Bond films. We never saw that. I mean, we see in Casino Royale that, you know, Daniel Craig, how he got his 00 status. That's the closest thing that we get in the film, you know, to actually getting that training history. But it's, I don't know. I really like it for the way that it knows where to guide you, just like you said with Matthew Vaughn. Because literally, until we were discussing it right now, I never thought about the fact that their training did not include any combat training of any kind at all.
Yeah, we see them running around with a gun, but we don't really see them doing anything.
No.
I mean, they don't feel the need to show it.
Yeah, it's really refreshing, I think. It just shows Vaughn and Goldman's creativity and just trying to work out what can we do different in these training scenes that so many people have seen before, with normal gun stuff. What do you make of like the balance though of like Eggsy's training stuff and then the main plot with Colin Firth, investigating what's going on? I think I prefer kind of the training stuff because with the the environmental storyline for the villain, I feel like we see that a lot now.
Well, it's also a mix of going back with action stuff with Eggsy and then more expository discussion type scenes with Colin Firth and Valentine just talking, and explaining what's going on more. So I think that in a way it's smart because it balances action and calmer type scenes. And it also shows that there is like a cerebral element to this too. So yes, Eggsy is like learning a lot as far as, in these action scenes, but a big part of what he's also going to have to do is blend in or be in a dangerous situation where he needs to be able to manage that with his mind instead of just get in a fight with somebody. Because, what we've seen with him before was kind of like acting out, when he is with these kind of bad guys. He doesn't fight with them. He does kind of outsmart them, but it's kind of taking that ability to outsmart people and bring it up to a more kind of like professional level almost or something.
Yeah.
And what we see Galahad doing is kind of similar to what Eggsy was doing, but just very stylish and professional.
Another thing that I want to bring up is I was just kind of scanning in my mind through the Bond films. In terms of our villain in this, so we have the SIM cards and the cell phones. And so the first thing that comes to mind for me is A View to a Kill. So in the 80s, we didn't have cell phones. But we did have microchips, and that's what Christopher Walken was all about.
Max Sorin.
Correct. And so it's just like, and he was crazy, really enjoyable performance.
The worst Bond film for me.
It's so much fun, though.
Roger, what are you doing, man? You look like you need a walking stick in this film. Come on.
When Roger Moore
should have retired
is trying to convince Christopher Walken that, he's not James Bond, and Christopher Walken can see on the computer that he's full of it, and he just starts laughing. That's my favorite part of the film. That's a 10.
Of course you're not. You're a really old man.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I know.
I mean,
oh my gosh.
That movie is almost a parody of James Bond unintentionally.
Yeah.
It's not the worst one for me. I would have to go with maybe The World Is Not Enough. God, that's a terrible movie.
Okay.
We'll just agree to disagree.
Okay. That was the first one I saw in the cinema. But...
Die Another Day is also bad. Some of the Pierce Brosnans are problematic for me, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, he uses a BMW, so...
Die Another Day. Oh, my. The ending.
Ooh.
Yeah, but...
Yeah, Die Another Day is... That's actually the first Bond movie I saw, though.
Yeah, and it was great when we first saw it.
And yet I still watched Bond movies after that, believe it or not.
Wow, didn't put you off.
It was good at first and it changed. I don't know.
Can only get better.
Also in A View to a Kill, we also have something different, which is, who is the tough guy? Grace Jones. That is the enforcer. So again, it's like, something that they brought forward. And, where I could think of environmentals, I thought of Quantum of Solace, where, we have what was the Green Group. They're saying that they're an environmental organization, but they're actually buying the world's water supply. So these are just the things that kind of showed up in the back of my mind.
Well, I mean,
Cool.
That's the funny thing with Valentine, right? Like, this is all like, oh, I'm an environmentalist. I want to fix climate change. Human beings are the problem. But arguably the people he's saving, which is, the rich leadership type people, are the source of the problem. He wants to eliminate, all, the great unwashed, right? Because that's the huge part of the population. But those aren't the people who made the decisions that put us in this position in the first place. So
what's interesting about the comic book is the fact that it's a similar plot, but the guy is just saving the people that he wants to save, his favorite people. Because in the comic book, he actually saves Mark Hamill, you know, because he is a massive Star Wars fan, so he wants to save Mark Hamill, you know. I think it's just like a gas toxin thing in the comic and not a mobile thing, which I think I prefer the mobile thing, really, in this. So, but I kind of prefer the fact that he is kind of saving his favorite people in the comic book compared to this one. They don't really go into that, as you say, Georgia. It's just the source of the problem are the people that he's saving. So they don't really go into those types of characters too much. I mean, you got like the Swedish royalty characters, and that's the only real characters of that type that we kind of get to know.
The one other thing I wanted to say about Quantum of Solace, Dominic Green, he is not anyone that can fight at all. He's terrible. He can't fight.
No.
He tries to swing an axe at the end of the movie and he hits himself in the foot. So again, it's just like Jackson's character in this. You know, it's just like he's not a fighter. He's just a guy with a plan.
No.
And money. Lots of money.
Yeah.
And a lot of satellites.
I didn't like the joke to begin with the fact that he gets nauseous with the sight of blood, but when he does see his own blood, when he sees Gazelle's blade foot thing go through his chest, he does vomit. So you do get some catharsis there with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's, yeah. I know, it's just like, ooh.
Gazelle's a really cool character, though.
Yeah, I feel like you've had experience with
I have taken
vomit.
a blade through the chest, many times. It's not pleasant.
No, I mean with vomit effects, maybe. You're like, oh, that's a lot, Sam.
The closest I had is one time I acted like I was vomiting. I didn't actually have anything in my mouth. I just made the sound really hard on your throat after a while.
Yeah. Well, we did a short where somebody had to pretend to throw up.
That's right.
And I had to make fake vomit for that. And
really? Wow.
I tasted it because if I was directing something, I was not going to make my actor do something that I wouldn't do myself. So I made it like oatmeal, and it was pretty disgusting.
White chocolate.
Yeah. Well, it was. I think I just had like kind of watery oatmeal for it, and I probably put something in there so it didn't taste quite as just boring and blah. But yeah, we had to have this character kind of just very broadly like onto like a table with books on it or something, and just it was pretty hilarious actually. But it wasn't like very projectile. She just kind of had it in her mouth, and it just kind of
yeah.
It was funny.
Need more throat action with that next time. Come on, clean it up. Let's go again.
She was doing it in almost like a polite way, I guess.
All right.
Polite vomiting.
The upper classes versus the lower class theme that goes through this film is really interesting to me. You know, it establishes very early on that Eggsy is from a poor background in South London and Galahad is from the upper classes. But what's interesting is that Galahad is willing to change with the times in terms of new Kingsman recruits. But you actually get like this strong idea from this little conversation with Michael Caine's character near the start, where Caine is like a traditionalist. He's just willing to recruit kids from the upper classes, from Oxford and Cambridge only, you know, Durham. So Michael Caine's character could go in either two ways, like he learns that Galahad was right or that he turns out to be a wrong and a bad guy. And because Michael Caine isn't in it that much, you're never quite sure where his true loyalties lie because, well, for one, he's Michael Caine. He doesn't do bad guy roles very often. So that was really interesting to me with his casting and how that story plays out. in terms of the class theme. And also Valentine as the villain is sort of a hybrid of both classes. He's extremely wealthy like the upper classes, but he doesn't dress like them at all. Like, he dresses more like Eggsy's style in the film. He likes McDonald's Happy Meals, like a lot of poor people have to go to. They can only afford fast food, so Valentine chooses that instead of a fancy meal, which he could easily afford, obviously. So I don't know. I guess Valentine's like someone that Eggsy could be, who could become like a corrupted by money and power. I think his character could simply be trying to be so different to what you get from a Bond villain. Yeah, I found the themes around class really interesting.
Yeah, that was maybe one of my favorite parts of this, honestly, is because it brings a lot of depth to what's going on in a simple kind of way, because class is a big deal in the UK and also in the US. I think it's more to do with like this idea of someone like the Samuel L. Jackson character who, has become rich through his smarts or whatever. These are people that we really tend to admire, whether we should or not, because a lot of times even these people who have become rich somehow because they're knowledgeable about something or whatever, they had a lot of advancements to begin with. We see this in real life a lot with certain people who shall remain nameless, but
I can name.
Well, I mean, one of them, I think he's calling Valentine calls to use one of his satellites in the movie. I'm not sure because he says something like E, and I was assuming he was talking to Elon Musk, but I don't know, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, this is somebody who has this narrative of, I run Tesla, so and I'm this genius, but he started out as like a rich guy with a lot of resources, and and a lot of credit is not given to some of the people who work for him, So I think that there's always something more to look at when you have somebody like that. But he does come off like this very nouveau riche character, Valentine, who has the money but not the class. And I think that that's the whole purpose of Eggsy's growth, is that he has to achieve both financial stability by the end of the film. He's not rich, but he'll be fine because Kingsman has a lot of resources. But he also has to have he also has to learn to have that class that he kind of has grown up without by virtue of the people that he's been around. So for him, he can't have one without the other, because it does kind of mess you up. Like, if you just have money, that doesn't suddenly make you a classy person. And Valentine is a great example of that. And also, how smart really is Valentine? He is very concerned about climate change, and he wants to do something about it. And he has, what seems to be basically unlimited funds in order to do something like that. But it kind of goes back to this Thanos kind of thing that we've talked about a lot, ourselves, where it's like you're
inevitable.
He's creating like a false scenario where like the only thing that you can do to conserve resources, Thanos, is to get rid of half the people. Like, you're telling me there's no other way to fix this problem other than killing, half of the people. And that's the same thing I'm saying to Valentine. Like, you have unlimited resources, and instead of saying, I'm going to invest in technology that will benefit everyone in the world and fix, all of these problems that we have, no, I'm just going to get half the people or more to kill themselves. And it's like, you're really locked into that idea, guy. Like, I mean, there's no other option. And I think that's always just really silly. But it probably imitates life.
At least it's a more fun way to do it, I guess.
See, it's interesting with Valentine, because I wasn't quite sure what his origin was. What I got out of Valentine is, Samuel L. Jackson said he did the lisp for this character because he used to have a lisp when he was younger. He had a speech impediment that he got over. Right. And he also thought that having this lisp would give the character a chip on their shoulder so that they would want to do something this terrible. So what I think about are like the outcasts, right? So Valentine would be an outcast because physically there's no strength, right? He can't stand the sight of blood. Okay. And then we have Gazelle, who I'm guessing is his partner. And, part of me is like, did he create her legs? Did he make enough money on his own to buy her the legs? And so these are people that I feel were outsiders. They weren't, anything that people would look at. It went even beyond issues of class. It went to issues of these are not our model-like people.
Well, it's ableism.
Yeah. So it's like we have that. And when we look at all of our Kingsmen, no one has any troubles like that. No one has a prosthetic hand. No one has been reconstructed. They're not cyborg. And so that is part of what I'm thinking about. When Valentine became, this billionaire, he, wanted to be a person that was noticed. And with his clothing, it does seem more youthful. But a lot of times, especially, when you see older people that become successful, they want to act like they're still young. Right. So they get these new clothes and they go out there and like, hey, it's me. So I didn't know if it was that was feeding, that feeling. In terms of class, I wasn't sure about Valentine. I felt that the McDonald's meal, again, is a great case of misdirection, but it also is something where perhaps he just prefers that to the steak dinner. And that could be somebody who did have wealth and was like, I don't want the filet tonight. I want the cheeseburger.
There's a lot of narrative in America of McDonald's and rich people. I mean, like Donald Trump served McDonald's at the White House when he was having some people guest there.
Oh, wow.
He served McDonald's and
so I'm guessing he definitely saw Kingsman then.
Well, I mean, he modeled his entire campaign after Machete, the Robert De Niro part of Machete, I think.
That's insanely true, it seems like.
But and Warren Buffett, I think there's some story maybe that Warren Buffett always eats an Egg McMuffin meal or something for breakfast every single day because he doesn't have to think about it, and it's just like he just eats it and that's one less decision he has to make or something ridiculous. So, there's a lot going on with that here in the US. And I think that it was an interesting point with Samuel L. Jackson that he has the lisp and that nobody will be able to look past that. So like no matter what he does, no matter how much money he makes, no matter how many changes he makes and how powerful and important he is, people are still never going to be able to look past that. So it's like his defining thing about him. With Gazelle, the fact that she has her legs amputated is actually, I would argue, an advantage for her in this case because she can use these sharp kind of prosthetic feet to like murder the shit out of everyone, better than anyone else.
Well, it's certainly an advantage, but what I'm saying is that initially, perhaps she lost her legs and wasn't able to get these legs.
Yeah, and it becomes an advantage. Yes. I think that's really smart.
And I feel like Valentine got that for her because he loves her. And it's like she, was able to do that. And then it's like she protects him.
And it's like, exactly. I feel like Valentine maybe saw her in an accident or something. I'm like, I can help you here. How about having some kick-ass razor sharp legs? Yeah. But then she realizes how powerful she is and like, maybe is Gazelle now like calling the shots and kind of using Valentine a little bit more in the story. You definitely get that a little bit with the acting as well. Favorite lines? With respect, Arthur, you're a snob. With respect, the world is changing. There's a reason why aristocrats developed weak chins. No, wait, I think we may have met. Did you serve me at the McDonald's in Winchester service station? No, but if I had, I would have given you some extra helping of secret sauce. While doing a particular gesture.
What could that gesture be?
Which he does multiple times. He does that when he's in the car, too.
Yeah, it makes me laugh. I like the references throughout the film to, different films, My Fair Lady, Trading Places.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say that on the top of my list is, Eggsy puts on the suit. Merlin goes, looking good, Eggsy. And Eggsy goes, feeling good, Merlin. I also quite enjoy when, Eggsy wants to take Merlin's machine gun.
Yeah, that is so good. No, that's mine. This is yours. He looks so insulted in that moment.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
So good.
Excuse me? Absolutely not. I don't care who you are.
That's good. And I like, when Harry's talking to that woman in the church, what he says in full is, I'm a Catholic whore currently enjoying Congress out of wedlock with my black Jewish boyfriend who works at a military abortion clinic. So, hail Satan and have a lovely afternoon, madam. I mean, he says it so great, and it's all just shoved into one sentence. I was pretty impressed. And I also like when Valentine says it's not that kind of movie, and later on that's called back, and Eggsy says, like you said, that ain't that kind of movie, bruv.
Hey, wait a minute. Valentine. That was Eddie Murphy's name in Trading Places.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
Just thought about that.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yep.
So they went deep with the Trading Places.
It's like, I feel like there's so much movie knowledge in this that you have to really go, okay, where did I get this from? Because again, as we're talking, and we've seen this one a bunch, I'm like, all right, let's take a look on the phone quick. Wait, is there one more connection I can make?
So many.
Man, I'm looking at, Billy Ray Valentine. That was Eddie Murphy in Trading Places.
Cool. As some of you would have learned last night, teamwork is paramount here at Kingsman. We're here to advance your skills, test you to the limit, which is why you're going to pick a puppy.
Oh, yeah. He picks the dog, and he's making fun of Roxy for choosing a poodle.
It's going to grow, right?
It's going to get bigger, right? Because he thinks it's a bulldog instead of a
pug. One which is quite absurd towards the end, which feels very out of place, and I'm not sure it's delivered that well, but I remember at the cinema it got a massive laugh, was from the Swedish from the Swedish princess, and she says, if you save the world, we can do it in the asshole. I'll be right back. I was like, what? What the hell did she just say?
Well, you see, that joke is amazing because, as you know, at the end of all the Bond movies, what do we have? He always is making love with the lady, the leading lady. They are together having sex. And in multiple films, there's always some gag where people, for some reason, turn on the camera and see them engage sexually. And then in this, we have Mark Strong's reaction, which is priceless.
Yeah.
And
oh, no.
He shuts it down. It's like, again, it's like that is like taking the Bond trope and taking it all the way to the moon. It's so absurd and so out of control that, you can't help but laugh because it's like, again, we're following this track. We've come to the secret base. We've saved the lady. That
was very funny.
It's really good. It's a great job of taking something over the top. Great example of escalation.
I think my favorite line though is near the start before the pub fight with Colin Firth. One of them says, "What the fuck are you doing here? You taking a piss?" And then he says, "More examples of young men who simply need a silver suppository." Which is great.
Yeah.
Screenplay score for me, I think this is really great. Yeah, I'm going to go fairly high, like an 8.6 for me. Really funny. I just love all the subversions of what you would expect, and like something else completely different happens. It's so good in that way. Yeah, and action-wise, you're not going to get much better than this film, frankly. You're really not. Yeah, 8.6. In terms of the writing in that, yeah.
It's incredible. It's so good because, you know, we have the homage, we have the love of these Bond films. It's wanting to take it back. It's poking fun, you know, at the film in a very loving way. It's bringing in your own influences. And, you know, we've got, you know, My Fair Lady in here, you know, fantastic.
Yeah.
I love the fact that all the examples that Galahad brings up, Eggsy doesn't know, but he knows My Fair Lady.
Yeah,
that's
great.
brilliant.
Oh, you are full of surprises.
It's so good. This movie, screenplay, we would go 8.8.
Nice. I love the fact that you are embracing the decimals. I love it. Some people don't like them at all, but this is good.
It gives us the opportunity to tweak a little bit.
Yeah, because it's like you want to get just right, you know, because it's hard. When you've seen so many movies, it's just like you need more leeway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's why.
Yeah, just thinking about the next guest who do not like decimals at all, but there we go. Acting, you know who you are. I love the fact that Michael Caine gets a good meaty scene with Taron Egerton near the end, where Caine obviously turns out to be a wrong'un. Michael Caine is definitely trying to be subtle and not trying to do too much when he's explaining why he's sided with Valentine. Really great subtle performance there. And Taron Egerton definitely matches Michael Caine in that scene. He doesn't feel like he needs to tone it down in his performance to make Michael Caine shine, where sometimes you see that when you have a big, well-known actor with someone very new and young. But I love it when Michael Caine is like dying, goes full Cockney and says, "You dirty little fucking prick," as he dies.
That's
I was
great.
like, yes, that is awesome.
Yeah, Taron Egerton, like, I think you got to give him a lot of credit. I don't know if this is his very first thing that he did, but I think it was one of the first things he did right out of school. And to get like a lead in a movie like this with this slate of actors that you're working with is pretty insane. I mean, like, you know,
you look at it through Matthew Vaughn's career, he is so willing to like cast unknowns. Like with Layer Cake, not many people really knew who Daniel Craig was, lead of the movie. Stardust, Charlie Cox, not many people knew who that guy was. Then obviously you have X-Men, and then you've got this film, Taron Egerton. No one knew who he was, so he's really willing to like give newcomers a real chance to be the lead in. I mean, let's be honest, this is a big film, so to give an unknown like the starring role here is great, and it kind of echoes like the Bond films as well, because they always kind of cast unknowns really when they cast new Bonds. So yeah, it's really brave from Matthew Vaughn here.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like we've talked about before with Colin Firth. Kind of a different type of casting for him, really, in a way that worked great. And he was game to like do training and learn how to do all this fighting stuff and everything. And it worked out great because he has just the exact type of feel. I think they said they were thinking about it being like David Niven and like who's the modern day version of that, you know.
Yeah.
And so they thought Colin Firth, but then they're like, yeah, but is he going to do all this fighting stuff, you know? So they had to reach out to him and check, and he was like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. And he is perfect. I mean, it just shows you how great he is. We haven't even really talked about Mark Strong as Merlin too much, but I mean, he's so good in this. And Sophia Boutella brings like this amazing physicality to Gazelle, and it's her doing a lot of that tumbling and fighting stuff, and she's unbelievably good.
Yeah, I think she used to be a dancer before she became an actor. Yeah, she's so good. Like, she's amazing in Climax, that kind of horror film. You see a lot of incredible physicality in that, which he certainly brings here. I think Kingsman was before climax, but and you can't really see where like they put the stunt woman. I think it probably is pretty much all her with the stunts. So I know there's probably some artifice there with wire work or something, but certainly towards the end. But my God, she's so convincing. And again, like she holds her own with her scenes with Samuel L. Jackson, as we've kind of spoke about already. Like, is there kind of a power conflict thing going on? Is she really pulling the strings and not Samuel L. Jackson? So it's a really interesting dynamic with their chemistry between those two.
Yeah, we saw a thing where she was saying like her first day of shooting, I think, was with Mark Hamill and Samuel L. Jackson.
Wow.
And she was just like, she was like, oh my God, is this really happening? You know?
The one thing I also want to bring up, which is kind of fun, is Michael Caine. So Michael Caine, right, real name Maurice Micklewhite, was basically in a gang and was a tough guy. And then he became, this big actor. And, for the most part, I think when you think of Michael Caine, you think refined, right? You think of a classy Michael Caine. And, we talked about class in Kingsman. So, we have this character who obviously came from the streets, as we find out, because his dying words, he goes back to the way that he used to speak. So Arthur, that's a hell of a name, right? King Arthur, right? So Arthur is a guy that made it from the streets up into the upper strata. And he doesn't want to let anyone else from the lower class up there. He doesn't want to let that happen. He wants to be as distanced from that as he possibly could be. And he never wants to let anyone know about his roots. And I find that really interesting, again, because, Michael Caine, before he was Michael Caine, was Maurice Micklewhite, the tough guy. And then this is, when you think of Michael Caine now, again, you think
Alfred,
about exactly these wonderfully, beautifully restrained performances.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that the other cool thing in that scene with Eggsy and Arthur is that Eggsy kind of pulls one over on him with his kind of like
sleight of hand,
lower class kind of abilities, of being like, oh yeah, look at that over there, and then switches the cops, like, I don't know, Princess Bride or something.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Like Mazzini.
That's funny.
But it's really cool that like he uses that prejudice against him.
I love the acting between Colin Firth and Samuel L. Jackson. Their scenes together, like, you can definitely see they're trying to like suss each other out, but at the same time they're not trying to give anything away. So it's just a really nice game that those two are kind of playing in terms of their performances, especially with that dinner scene. I felt like I could feel, and see the subtlety there that was going on in their acting. I quite enjoyed that.
Well, actually, going back to an older point that came up, I actually preferred Galahad's investigation to the training.
Oh, okay.
Because I liked this, again, it was like Sherlock Holmes. And it was, he's there with Moriarty, and both of them are highly intelligent, but they're not showing their cards. And I really like that. You weren't sure what was going to happen. I actually didn't think Galahad was going to make it out of that dinner. I thought that would be the end of him. Yeah, because, I mean, that's the thing. Valentine is dangerous. Gazelle is dangerous. So I felt the threat. With the training exercises, aside from the first one, which I found terrifying and fantastic, I felt pretty comfortable with the rest of it, except for kill the dog. And that was, I was like, what? But I felt comfortable.
Like, you didn't feel like there was a danger that people were going to get killed.
No, and I didn't think Eggsy wasn't going to make it. I mean, he's the star of the show. Even if he didn't make it, he'd make it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, with the water thing, I think there's just like an inherent, like, with, somebody being in a room full of water. And I mean, I think about the actors, and
Oof.
Taron Egerton did another underwater thing in Rocket Man. They just keep wanting to drown Taron Egerton in every movie.
Yeah, love that film. Well, it's interesting. Like, they could have, I mean, with the train interrogation scene, like, they could have sliced off his hands and feet and got some nice, like, some nice knives for limbs or something to take on Gazelle at the end. Possible.
Okay.
Hey, we've already seen it happen. Yeah.
Very unlikely.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, you don't know where it's going to go, but you do feel that the drowning scene where one person dies, I felt like that was very scary, but I didn't feel that there was, in my opinion, that much weight put on the death. It was like, Merlin was like, this person, died because of you. So people looked sullen for a second.
But then we moved on really quickly.
Right on. Yeah, that was
very early in the film. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite performance, guys? Who you going for?
Do you want to go first?
I mean, Colin
so you can
Firth.
pick Colin Firth, and then I'll have to pick somebody else.
Colin Firth. Colin Firth. All the way.
Yeah, I'm going Colin Firth as well. I mean,
Colin Firth.
You just don't expect him to perform these action scenes as smoothly as you would expect. Yes, Matthew Vaughn is a big help with that, but like, he has to do it convincingly, Colin Firth. And the mix of his suave persona and the dry nature of some of the lines he delivers is just fantastic.
I think he's the standout for sure in this.
Yeah.
But I do want to give credit to Taron Egerton for being Eggsy. And it would have been so easy for Matthew Vaughn to pick anyone else for that part because, this guy doesn't have a lot of experience, He's basically a newcomer at this point, but he really manages to do so much in this movie as a kid who, is fresh out of drama school. He's doing action, like huge action. He's doing a very growth-oriented performance where, this character starts out very specific way and then grows over the course of it. He has to do some emotional stuff. He has to do funny stuff. He has to do silly stuff. He has to do so much, and he really manages it in such an effortless way while also performing with super heavyweights like Michael Caine, and not given an inch there. That I think he deserves a whole lot of credit and probably a lot more jobs than he gets. I mean, I think I'd put Taron Egerton in anything. Rocket Man was like one of my favorite movies of all time, really. So like, I just think he's a killer. He's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I love Taron Egerton towards the end as well. The fact that he kind of plays with like the more upper class nature, the more posh nature as a role in inverted commas, to get through the initial parts of that final act, which is really fun. The way he drifts in and out of the accents is really clever. There when he's talking to Mark Strong, he goes more South London, and then when he is talking to people he doesn't know, it's more posh. And he does that effortlessly. So good. And it's not too much,
Yeah, when he orders the martini, it's like a performance for sure, like like he's like, oh, I have to act like a complete asshole like all of these people in this room so I can fit in.
What does he say? Something like, I want you to stare at a bottle of vermouth while you make
an unopened bottle.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like he says, obviously not vodka. Gin, and obviously Bond drinks vodka in his martini, which I found funny. Acting score for me, I think it's really impressive. Yeah, I think I'll go like 8.5 for me. 8.6. Just that chat of how good Taron is, I'm like, extra point for that. 8.6.
Excellent work.
He deserves that. Yeah, he's great. We went with a solid 9 here. I mean, when I start thinking about who's not good in this, I'm coming up pretty short. I just think everybody in this is pretty great. Anybody that had the opportunity. I think that sometimes the Roxy character doesn't get as much as she maybe could have. I believe they cut out a lot of what she did, more for time than anything else. But she's still good. Even though she doesn't necessarily stand out as much as I think she could. But when I am just examining everybody else for inconsistencies or anything like that, I really don't have a lot to criticize. I just think everyone is very strong in this. And the people who knock it out of the park, like, just do so in such a grand scale. Like, this is, like, probably my favorite thing Colin Firth's ever done. And that's, like, that's saying something, because this guy's awesome in so many parts. But he just absolutely nails it here, which I think, makes it so much more difficult when you go into the Golden Circle and see what they did to this character and how weird it gets. But he kills it here.
Even the villains are good, like the dirtbag, boyfriend of the mother's.
Oh yeah, those
the
guys
mother
are horrible.
is excellent. All of these, the villains, you hate them, you despise them, they're sickening. And again, to get that response from you, they have to really be doing something right. Those are fearless performances, because they are showing the scummiest scum that's ever scummed.
There's your Instagram reel right there. Right, let's add up the scores then for Kingsman, The Secret Service.
The tabulation song from John. That would stress me out.
Yeah, it did a bit.
Sorry.
Kingsman, The Secret Service gets a very impressive 53.1. So it kind of blows Kick-Ass out the water, who only got 48.9. So Kingsman wins this one. Next episode, as One Love is out, the new Bob Marley biopic is out. We are talking, naturally, biopics. And we'll have guests for that one. Sam and Callum from One of Us is Bored, the Decimal Place haters. Guys, you have been amazing as always. My God, you guys can talk for America about movies. So cool.
We can talk, period. I think it's where you should have stopped there. We know it.
Guys, this is your opportunity again to talk about your podcast, and where can we find you?
Sure. Comfort Films Podcast. This year we did switch to a bi-weekly format, so we're kind of doing a duo of movies on different topics. January, we did Gothic Romance, so we did Hitchcock's Rebecca, and then Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro. Both movies we enjoy quite a bit. And then John's theme title for February will be Getting Lit with Literature.
Getting lit.
Well, we're doing Jane Austen movies. We're going to be doing the more recent Emma with Anya Taylor-Joy, and Sense and Sensibility with our guest Jessica Sandage, who's an opera singer friend of ours. So we're looking forward to those shows coming up. You can find us on, if you want to listen to us, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, and any other podcast platform you normally listen to. If we are missing from your favorite, please reach out to us at Instagram to let us know so we can add on there. We're pretty active on that site with different trivia and things about the movies that we talk about.
And they are hard.
Yeah, we also have a Twitter account that's less active and a TikTok account that's rather sad. But that's okay.
You could also take a look. We can also take a look on comfortfilmspodcast.com, and that has links to our shows. It also has essays that have come from past guests and from us, which are reflections of the movies that we watched. So if you ever want to check us out, we're on YouTube. We're old.
Yeah, we have some weird YouTube stuff. Whatever. It's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. Right, guys, it's time to say goodbye. It's goodbye from Georgia. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's goodbye from John. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm going to head off to my local tailor shop and start pulling on clove hooks and see what happens. Bye-bye.
All right, well, we'll bail you out of jail if that happens.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.